Our next speaker is Mr. Gerwert from Cassidian. His talk is basically on international cooperation and future of air combat systems. Mr. Gerwert is the CEO of the Military Air Systems and member of the board of Cassidian, formerly known as EADS. And his roles in the company included CFO of the Defense and Civil Systems Division of Daimler Chrysler Aerospace, as well as CFO of Dornier GmbH and member of the board of management. He is industrial engineering graduate from University of Bielefeld and studied industrial engineering at University of Paderborn, a degree in electrical engineering. I hand over to Mr. Gerwert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to do the next 15-20 minutes to talk about the future of combat aircraft, but my main focus will be the topic of international cooperation. Before I would like to talk about the aircraft or about cooperation, I think first we should find an answer. Is there still a need for future combat aircraft? Or is there peace in the world and there isn't any further need, in particular, for further developments of combat aircraft? And if you're looking to the future military trends around the world, I think the answer, and I hope you expected that from myself, is yes, we need as well in the future combat aircraft. And we need cooperations. I will come to that more in detail. If you're looking to the future threats, as it was already mentioned, very difficult to predict what will happen in the future. But I think you can immediately agree the threats are more and more global. There are no more single cases of war in the world. We will see more and more asymmetric threats, and it is not that only military people threaten us. There are more and more issues of terrorists, pirates, and so on. And so that means this threat, in my point of view, it's even increasing around the world. But that is not only all. The next topic is proliferation, the proliferation of technology. As well, now, dangerous weapons are already in the hand as well of terrorists and other organizations. So it's not that high technology is only in the hand of military people. What is the implication for the industry? We have to take care. We will see more and more the global market caused as well by the global threats. We have to work more and more on advanced technologies. That was mentioned as well already before. And the market is becoming more and more global as well in the defense area. Because up to now, at least before the last decade, we had more national markets on defense. This time is as well over. It is an extremely high competitive international market. So now coming to the issue of the air forces. If you're looking to the Air Force, what do they need? What is the main mission for the Air Force? Without any doubt, the first task is they have to control the air. Or even more, they have to get dominance about the air if they go into a war. That is the first mission task of the Air Force. Then the next step is that will be increasing to getting more and more intelligence and situation awareness. And last but not least, of course, you need as well the capabilities for ground attack. And if we talk about the Air Forces, the capabilities of the Air Force, they need the technology, or they need aircraft for mobility and airlift. The future military environment. Is it enough to have a combat aircraft? Is it enough to have a multi-role combat aircraft? I believe, that is not enough. We will work in a so-called networking-centric environment. That means interoperability around the different actors is becoming more and more important. And that is as well related to the air superiority. But that is not only a topic for one nation, it is as well a topic, how do you work jointly with other forces? So that means the networking between the different armed forces is becoming more and more important. I already mentioned the need for air superiority, but as well the need for surveillance and reconnaissance. And that is what we believe if we talk about future combat aircraft, future combat air mission. I strongly believe for a long time we will have a combination between manned and unmanned aircraft. There's a particular discussion today ongoing, is the next generation of combat aircraft unmanned? Yes, there will be unmanned aircraft, but I do not believe that the full next generation of combat aircraft is already unmanned. If you talk about the 5th generation or 6th generation of aircraft. So I strongly believe, at least for the next decade, we will see, on the one side, the need for further enhanced manned aircraft, combat aircraft, and on the other side, more and more, the UAVs becoming more and more important, but in the first environment, more on the surveillance, or more with the surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities, and then you will have the network between the manned and the unmanned aircraft working together in one mission. That is what we call, if you just taking only into account the air superiority, the network-centric environment just within the air. You mentioned that cost is important, and is it still possible for the nations to have a lot of different aircraft for different missions, air to ground, air to air? The answer is more or less impossible. And more we will go into this multi-role aircraft, multi-mission aircraft. I just give you one example. So, I'm coming from Germany, and just one example what the Germans are doing, or what they did in the last years, and even what they will do in the next 5 to 10 years. They replaced more or less all combat aircraft by one aircraft. That is the Eurofighter Typhoon. And the Eurofighter Typhoon was developed from the beginning as a multi-role aircraft, starting at the beginning with more sophisticated air-to-air capabilities and then increasing their capabilities in more and more air-to-ground roles. And this aircraft will replace the F-4, and over the time, this aircraft will as well replace the still flying Tornadoes in the German Air Force. And that is what this picture should show to you. We strongly believe that the multi-role combat aircraft will be in operations, and that was mentioned as well, for the next 20, 30, maybe 40 years. But in parallel, we will come to the more UAV systems. And what I mentioned before, my belief is in the next 5 to 10 years, more and more surveillance reconnaissance, and then as well the first UCAV capabilities. But on the UCAV capabilities, the first missions are most probably air-to-ground and not air-to-air. So that gives the answer. We believe for the next 15, 20, 30 years, there is a need for future combat manned aircraft. Now coming to the second part of my presentation, the partnership. Around the world, that is valid, I think, in Europe, but not only in Europe, we're getting more and more budget constraints. So that as well, there isn't a huge decrease in defense budget around the world. And there are not only aircraft, there are as well other needs and other requests by the different armed forces. And technology, if you like it or not, technology is expensive. And the cost for new technologies are increasing more and more. What does it mean? If we have more or less a flat budget, but increasing cost for the development of new capabilities of new aircraft, we have to find a way to share the cost and to share technology. Just this slide shows you an example. If you're looking to the development cost of a first generation of fighter or a third generation and the last generation of fighter, more or less with each generation, you double just the development cost of such an aircraft. And is that affordable? Is that affordable by one nation? Most probably not. What could be the way out? As I mentioned before, share the development cost. Share the development cost from the beginning. I think that is the most prominent example at the moment is the Joint Fight Striker. They looked for that. Partners around the world from the beginning share the development cost. What we have done with the Eurofighter already 15 or 20 years ago. That was the first idea to share the burden of the cost for the development. Even, it's obvious, if you're getting more partners in the program, you're getting additional requests. You're getting additional demands from the different users. So that means, in total, for the development, the costs are slightly higher, but then divided by 2 or 3 for each nation, it's cheaper as to have it just with one nation. This is one angle of this view. The other point is a learning curve. The aircraft is a high sophisticated aircraft. And in particular on the assembly part, it's still high manual work. So it's not that you have a high degree of automatization. That even makes maybe not so much sense if you just build 200, 300, 500, 600,000 aircraft compared to millions of cars. So that means you will get a learning curve, and with the higher number of units, you can reduce the cost, you can reduce the price just through the economies of scale. To get economies of scale, you need more customer, you need more partners for such a development. And it is not only cost, it is as well technology. If we take into account the high sophisticated technology of an aircraft, from an airframe to a weapon integration or to electronic warfare or avionic systems. Is there still one company in the world which can cover everything? Maybe some, but I'm sure not so many. So on the other side, you have to define even industries which are capable to develop and to produce high sophisticated subsystems of such an aircraft. And what does it mean as well? Is to share this technology between different industries and between different nations. And if you share that even between different nations, you can decide which nation can apply to this technology or to this technology. But then, if you share that even between nations, you are automatically depending from each other. Because if you have a single source from one nation or from another nation, you are heavily depending between the industry and between the different nations. And that is more or less what we have done on the Eurofighter approach already, what I mentioned some years ago. And what are the main benefits for the customer? Because all what we are doing must be in a benefit of the customer and not the benefit of the industry. Of course, finally, there should be as well one benefit for the industry, but the first view should be the customer. What I mentioned before, if we share it from the beginning, each customer can bring his request, his needs into this program. So finally, each customer will get the best product just for him. The contained investment, what I mentioned is if you have different industries involved in the development and in the production, you have the technology in the different countries and in the different industry within the countries. And that is partnership. That is what I mentioned, depending from each other. Immediately, if you have one program, you have access to the technology of the other partners. But you have to share this technology. And I will not go through each topic of this slide, but last but not least, what I mentioned before as well in this net-centric environment, you are sure that you can be interoperable. The interoperability between the different partners if they join the program, is a given without any doubts. That is the scheme which we have selected for the Eurofighter program. Sometimes, from an outsider, it looks very difficult. If the left wing, if you're looking to Europe, the left wing is coming from Italy, the right wing is coming from Spain, the fuselage is coming from Germany, the front end is coming from UK, the other topics coming as well from Italy. Shared technology between different nations. That was the principle. And shared cost. Keep the development cost for each nation affordable. But then, and that is what I mentioned, that each nation has its own dedicated request and each nation has its own dedicated needs. The final decision was that we will have in each nation a final assembly line directly dedicated to the end customer within the nation. So with this approach, at least we were capable to get one contract from the beginning for roughly 620 aircraft. And if you're looking to Europe, and if you're looking to the small nations in Europe, that was a huge contract for us. We are not US. That's without any doubt. If you're looking to the US for such nations, they have, of course, much higher demands. But that was the only way to be more or less competitive or in the same cost range as our nice friends from the US. That is what I mentioned before. Do it jointly and have the design for the product from the beginning. And now we are already in the phase of the deliveries of the program. The same concept which we now have is for the in-service support. So we share the cost of the spare parts. We share the cost of further developments. We share the cost of maintenance between the different nations. And what I mentioned, that is only possible if you are open to have this technology transfer to all partners within the program and without any restrictions. Because if you do that with restrictions, you cannot be a real, reliable partner. So the outcome of that, within the four nations, we believe, we are convinced, we have one of the best multi-role combat aircraft in the world. It was affordable for the different nations. Each nation keeps his sovereignty, important that each nation can keep his sovereignty. Each nation now got an industrial base. I just give you an example of this program. With this program, roughly 100,000 employees are employed in Europe just on the Eurofighter Typhoon, and roughly 400 main subcontractors are involved in this so-called cooperation. Subcontractors. And on the other side, we cooperate between the top European defense industry. So we cooperate between EIDS, we cooperate between Finmeccanica, we cooperate with BAE. And on the other side, we are competitors for other programs. well, sometimes difficult to understand. So you have partners, you're working together for this program, and in other programs, you are even competitors. As well, a new approach within Europe for such a program. And if you're looking to military programs, that is what I mentioned here, 70% back to the government. So, of course, the government has to pay to the industry the price of the development or of the production. But due to the payback through taxes, the government is more or less getting back 70% of the price which they pay for the program. So that means to have your own resources and your own capability within your country, finally, even the government will get a lot of the money back which was spent for the program. I already mentioned the interoperability and standardization. That is the current approach on which we are working, and we strongly believe that could be the way for India. And I'm coming now to India since 3 or 4 years. And I'm impressed by the high technology which is already available in your country. And I'm even more impressed by the high-skilled engineers which you have in your country. Now you can go two approaches. You can go for technology development, for technology roadmap, for a new program, and we strongly believe that will take a long time. Or there's a way to find as well an international cooperation, maybe even with different companies. So it must be not just only us. And that is what I said before. Even we cooperate in the one or the other program with our competitors, but we cooperate. And we have a cooperational approach to our customers. And if I consider the situation here in India, and we know that, all of you are aware about that, there is a need for future combat aircraft. And there is a need for the next decade or even more. And it is not just the MMRCR. There is a further development of your LCR. There is the further development of your trainer aircraft. There is now the need for the mission aircraft. And there is a need for UAVs. And we believe that due to a strong cooperation with industrial partners and with a real global cooperation, that could be as well a benefit for the Indian Air Force, for the Indian Armed Forces, and last but not least, for the Indian industry. Thank you for your attention.